Someone looked at your piece and called it a problem. Maybe it was a doctor. Maybe it was someone who loved you. Maybe it was the culture at large, the ambient, never quite stated assumption that a man who has stopped striving, stopped performing, stopped organizing his life around the pursuit of more, must have something wrong with him, must be withdrawing, must be depressed, must be giving up, because the alternative, that he actually arrived somewhere, is not a conclusion the world around him is equipped to recognize. Today we are going to talk about a word that the Stoic philosophers used 2,000 years ago for the state that the modern world keeps misdiagnosing. Apatheia, not apathy. The words look similar. They are not the same thing. Apathy is the absence of feeling, the flatness of a man who has stopped caring because something in him broke, or gave up, or could no longer find the energy to engage. Apathy is the symptom the world is right to worry about. Apatheia is something else entirely. It is the freedom from emotional disturbance, the specific, hard-won, deliberately cultivated state of a man whose inner life is no longer at the mercy of external conditions, who is not moved by every provocation, not destabilized by every loss, not dependent on external validation to feel adequate, not running the chronic anxiety of a man who needs the world to keep confirming that he is enough. The Stoics did not regard apatheia as a symptom. They regarded it as the destination, the specific psychological condition that a lifetime of philosophical practice was designed to produce. The goal, the modern world looks at the man who has reached it and reaches for a diagnosis. Today we examine why, what apatheia actually is, what it produces, why it looks like depression from the outside when it is the opposite of depression on the inside, and what it means for every man who has been told his piece is a problem. It was never a problem. It was always the point. Section 1. What apatheia actually is. The concept the Stoics built. The Stoics were not gentle philosophers. They were not building a self-help framework for comfortable people seeking minor improvements to their already adequate lives. They were building a system for surviving the worst that existence could produce: grief, exile, enslavement, illness, the loss of everything, with the interior intact. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations while running an empire through plague and war. Epictetus developed his philosophy while enslaved. Seneca wrote on equanimity while watching Nero's court consume everything around him. These were not men theorizing about difficult circumstances. They were men living in them, and the philosophy they built was forged in those circumstances, rather than imagined from safety. At the center of that philosophy was a distinction, the distinction between what is within your control and what is not, what you can govern and what you cannot. Your judgments, your intentions, your responses, yours. Everything else, the behavior of other people, the verdict of fortune, the opinions of the world, the outcomes of your efforts, not yours, not within your governance, not worth organizing your inner life around. Apatheia was the psychological state produced by genuinely living that distinction, not performing it, not intellectually endorsing it, while still being governed by the things outside your control. Actually living it, having done the interior work of detaching your well-being from the things that are not within your governance, so that when those things move, you do not move with them. This is not emotional numbness. The Stoics were explicit about this. Apatheia does not mean not feeling. It means not being enslaved by what you feel. The man in apatheia still experiences loss, still notices injustice, still feels the pull of what he values. He is not a stone. He is a man whose relationship with his own emotional life has changed from one of subjection to one of governance. He feels things. They do not run him. That is the distinction the modern diagnostic framework has consistently failed to make, and the failure of that distinction is why the man who has reached apatheia keeps getting handed a depression questionnaire. Section 2. Why it looks like depression from the outside. Depression and apatheia share a surface presentation that is genuinely confusing if you are observing from the outside without asking the right questions. The man in apatheia is not visibly striving. He is not performing ambition or chasing status signals or generating the specific observable output of masculine effort that the world around him has been trained to read as health. He is quieter than he was, less reactive, less available for the emotional labor of managing other people's anxiety about his adequacy, less interested in the competitions that previously organized his energy. From the outside, this looks like withdrawal, and withdrawal, in the diagnostic framework, is a symptom. The man in depression is also quiet, also less reactive, also less available, also apparently withdrawn from the competitions that previously organized his energy. The surface presentation overlaps, The internal reality does not. The man in depression is quiet because the noise has overwhelmed him, because the weight of the world has become too heavy to carry visibly, and he has stopped trying. His withdrawal is a collapse inward, a retreat from a world that is too much, toward a self that has insufficient resources to meet it. The man in Apatheia is quiet because he no longer needs to be loud. His quiet is not a collapse, it is a settling. The specific, stable, genuinely grounded quiet of a man who has stopped performing for an audience he no longer needs the approval of. His withdrawal is not a retreat from a world that is too much. It is a selective disengagement from the parts of the world that were never worth engaging with in the way he was engaging with them. One man is drowning. One man has reached the shore. From a distance, they both look like they stopped swimming. The question that distinguishes them is not what they are doing. It is what they are experiencing while they are doing it. And that question is the one the surface observation does not answer, and that the world around the man in Apatheia rarely thinks to ask. Section 3. What the misdiagnosis costs. When society looks at Apatheia and calls it depression, something specific happens to the man being looked at. He starts to doubt what he found. Not immediately, not in the single moment of the misdiagnosis, but in the accumulated weight of enough people, enough doctors, enough family members, enough cultural messaging, telling him that the state he is in is not a destination but a malfunction, that the peace he feels is not a genuine peace but a symptom of something missing, that the quiet is not settled but numb, that what he reached after years of the hardest interior work of his life is actually a warning sign requiring intervention. The man who doubts what he found starts looking for the anxiety he no longer has, starts wondering whether the absence of the chronic striving he used to live with is evidence of something wrong rather than evidence of something resolved, starts performing the distress that the world expects from him rather than inhabiting the peace that the world does not know how to read. This is the specific, invisible, almost never named cost of the misdiagnosis. Not that the man gets the wrong treatment, though that happens and it matters, but that the misdiagnosis reaches into the interior and introduces doubt into the one place where the doubt can do the most damage, the man's relationship with his own experience of his own life. The Stoics understood that the judgments we make about our own experience, the story we tell ourselves about what we are feeling and what it means, are themselves the primary determinant of our well-being. A man who experiences peace and judges it as peace is a man living in peace. A man who experiences peace and judges it as depression is a man who has been given depression by a misdiagnosis, not by his actual condition. The misdiagnosis does not find a problem, it creates one, in the man who was fine, who had done the work, who had arrived somewhere real, and who, in the absence of the language to defend what he found, allowed the world's incorrect reading of it to become his own. Section 4. Why the world needs you to be disturbed. The misdiagnosis is not random. It is not the product of well-meaning ignorance alone. It is produced by the same incentive structure the society needs men miserable video examined. A man in Apatheia is a man who has stopped being disturbed, and a man who has stopped being disturbed has stopped being useful to every system that runs on male disturbance. The consumer economy runs on the specific anxiety of the man who is not yet enough. The man in Apatheia has resolved that anxiety. He is no longer purchasing his way toward adequacy because he no longer experiences inadequacy. He is not the consumer economy's preferred customer, and the consumer economy has an interest, not a conspiratorial one, a structural one, in the narrative that his resolution is a symptom. The status hierarchy runs on the striving of men who need the hierarchy's verdict to feel adequate. The man in Apatheia has exited the hierarchy's jurisdiction. He has built an internal standard that does not require the hierarchy's confirmation. The hierarchy has an interest in the narrative that his exit is avoidance rather than arrival. The clinical framework, not maliciously but structurally, is organized around the identification and treatment of disturbance. A man without disturbance has nothing the clinical framework is designed to address. The clinical framework has an interest, structural rather than conspiratorial, in finding disturbance where disturbance is not present, rather than in confirming the absence of disturbance in a man who has genuinely resolved it. The Stoics anticipated this. They understood that a man who had achieved genuine equanimity would be regarded with suspicion by a world organized around perpetual emotional reactivity. Marcus Aurelius wrote specifically about the social pressure to abandon the philosophical practice that was producing his equanimity. The pressure from a court that interpreted his calm as coldness, his stability as detachment, his governance of his own emotional life as evidence of insufficiency rather than mastery. 2,000 years later, the pressure has different language. It has a DSM category, it has a questionnaire, it has a prescription, but it is the same pressure from the same source toward the same end. Return to disturbance, return to striving, return to being useful to the systems that require your disturbance to function. Section 5. How to know the difference. Apatheia versus actual depression. This video is not an argument that depression does not exist or that men should refuse treatment for genuine clinical depression. Depression is real. Its costs are real and severe. The male suicide rate, the most extreme expression of untreated male depression, is the most urgent mental health crisis in the developed world. Men who are genuinely depressed need and deserve genuine help. The misdiagnosis this video is examining runs in both directions. Calling apatheia depression is a mistake. Calling depression apatheia is a potentially fatal one. So how does a man know which one he is in? The Stoics offered a practical diagnostic that is more useful than most of what the modern clinical framework provides for this specific distinction. Ask whether the quiet is stable or fragile. The man in apatheia has a quiet that holds under pressure, that does not require specific external conditions to be maintained, that is present in difficulty as well as in ease. The man in depression has a quiet that is actually suppression, that holds until something breaks through it, and when something breaks through it, what is underneath is not peace but pain. Stability versus fragility is the first distinguishing feature. Ask whether the disengagement is selective or total. The man in apatheia is not disengaged from everything. He is disengaged from specific things, the status competitions, the performance obligations, the approval-seeking behaviors, while remaining genuinely engaged with what he actually values. His friendships, his craft, his physical health, the specific, chosen investments of a man who has decided where his energy belongs. Total disengagement from everything, including what the man himself values, is depression. Selective disengagement from what the man has assessed as not worth engaging with is apatheia. Ask whether the absence of striving is experienced as relief or as loss. The man in apatheia experiences the end of chronic striving as relief, as the specific, clean, genuine relief of a burden set down that was never his to carry. The man in depression experiences the absence of striving as loss, as the flatness of a man who wanted to strive and found he no longer could. Relief versus loss, arrival versus collapse. That distinction is where the honest self-examination lands. And ask, most simply and most honestly, whether the peace feels like something found or something missing. The man in apatheia knows the difference, because he was in enough disturbance before arriving where he is that the contrast is available to him as direct experience. He is not guessing that he found something. He knows, because he knows what not having it felt like, and this is not that. Section 6. What apatheia produces. The man the Stoics were building. The Stoics did not pursue apatheia as an end in itself. They pursued it as the precondition for everything else that made a human life genuinely worth living, because the man who is not governed by his emotional disturbance is the man who is free to act from his actual values rather than from his anxieties. The man who does not need external validation is the man who can tell the truth when the truth is uncomfortable. The man who is not destabilized by loss is the man who can love fully without the fear of loss preventing the fullness of the loving. The man who has resolved his chronic inadequacy anxiety is the man who can give genuinely rather than transactionally, who can be present for other people from surplus rather than from the management of deficit. Apatheia does not produce a man who has withdrawn from life. It produces a man who is finally available for it, available in the specific way of someone who is not simultaneously managing his own disturbance while trying to be present for everything else, who is not half elsewhere in the anxiety of his own inadequacy while nominally engaged with the things he says he values, who is not performing presence while actually being absent in the way of a man whose attention is perpetually divided between the thing in front of him and the management of the thing inside him. The men who left Rome for the desert fathers this series examined, were not running from life. They were clearing the disturbance that was preventing them from living it. The apatheia they were building in the silence was not the destination, it was the foundation, what they built on it, the communities, the philosophy, the specific, durable, civilization-outlasting structures of genuine human meaning required the foundation to be possible. You cannot build on disturbance, you can only react to it, And a life organized around reaction is a life organized around everything outside you, rather than everything within. The man who reaches apatheia has stopped reacting and started choosing. That is not depression. That is not withdrawal. That is not giving up. That is what the Stoics spent their entire philosophical tradition trying to produce, in the men who were willing to do the work to get there. And if someone looked at that man and called it a problem, they were not seeing him clearly. They were seeing what his peace cost them, his unavailability for their anxiety, his refusal to confirm that the disturbance they live in is the only way to live. It is not the only way. It never was. The Stoics knew it 2,000 years ago, and the men who have found apatheia in this generation know it now, whether the world gives them the word for it or not. Conclusion. Apatheia is not apathy. It is freedom from emotional disturbance, the specific, hard-won, deliberately cultivated state of a man whose inner life is no longer at the mercy of external conditions. The Stoics called it the destination. The modern world calls it a symptom. The man who has reached it knows the difference from the inside even when the people observing him from the outside do not. The misdiagnosis costs something real. It introduces doubt into the one place where doubt can do the most damage, the man's relationship with his own experience of his own life. And the man who doubts what he found, who starts looking for the disturbance that is no longer there because the world expects him to have it, can lose what he built through the accumulated weight of other people's incorrect reading of his peace. Do not let that happen. Know what you found. Know the difference between arrival and collapse. Know that the quiet that holds under pressure, that remains selective rather than total, that feels like relief rather than loss, that quiet has a name, a 2,000-year-old name. And the men who named it were not describing a malfunction. They were describing the goal. So here is what I want to know. Have you experienced the misdiagnosis? The moment someone looked at your piece and called it a problem, what did they call it? And how did you know they were wrong? Tell me below. Because the man who has the word for what he found is harder to talk out of it. And that is exactly what this video was for.